Welcome to Voices,
a podcast from the Institute for Human Rights and Business.
Here, we're seeking to elevate the range of perspectives
on the role of business in the world
and in people's everyday lives.
Hello, I'm John Morrison. I'm the CEO of the Institute for Human Rights and Business, IHRB, and it's with great pleasure that I'm here chatting with our new chair of our International Advisory Council, Margot Wallström. Margot, you're not quite with me in the UK. Tell everybody where you are at the moment.
Hello there, John, and thank you very much for inviting me to this. And I am next to the biggest lake in Sweden, Lake Vänern, where I live with my family and where I have self-isolated for quite some time now. But I have a nice view and I'm in the middle of the forest.
Beautiful, yes. And it's just, we're recording this, it's autumn, and we were talking about the leaves falling from the deciduous trees, and the bees, you've given them sugared water, I believe, to help them through the winter.
Well, we are lucky enough to live in a place where we can keep a couple of beehives, and we also have chickens. So we now have 15 chickens, and not yet producing any eggs, but we are waiting for that. So I'm lucky to have such a varied daily routine that includes feeding chickens.
Well, we're welcoming you back to our International Advisory Council. You were a member before, and you were called away by the Swedish government to do something there, I believe. But you're back, and you've willingly taken the role of chair. Our previous chairs, I think, people know, but Mary Robinson was our founding chair, and then Professor John Ruggie then came afterwards. So we're very pleased to have you third in that succession. But obviously, you have done many things in your career. Elected to the Swedish Parliament at the age of 25. You were Minister for Consumer Affairs, Women, Youth, and Churches, I believe, as well. EU Commissioner for the Environment for 5 years, and then you were first Vice President of the European Commission for 6 years, from 2004 to 2010, leading on institutional relations and communications. Then for the UN, Special Representative of Sexual Violence in Conflict, and then most recently as the Swedish Minister for Foreign Affairs from 2014 to 2019. Now, in all of that experience, a lot of it for governments at the highest level, for the UN, you must have interacted with business and business leaders many times. Are you left with a positive or a negative impression? What's the overriding impression of business you have from a societal perspective after all those interactions?
Well, thank you, John. And first of all, thank you very much for welcoming me back to IHRB, and this is big shoes to fill, those of both John Ruggie and of course Mary Robinson. So I'm a bit nervous, but at the same time, I enjoyed it very much. The short time that I already spent with you and for you, and I have the highest respect for everything that you are doing, and I think it is absolutely right and timely to come back to this, to ensure and work for the defense of human rights, including with business. You know, I'm a Swedish social democrat, so we have always been able to I think work also ideologically and practically in a way that we balance the interests of business, because we need business to create jobs. And all my contacts have been with I would say constructive and wise business leaders. And I think also small and medium-sized businesses are very important in our society. But we can also see, unfortunately, how in today's world, so many people are exploited and abused on the labor market and denied their human rights. So I think we still have so much more to do. So when only money is allowed to take over, I think that we run a big risk of seeing also the suppression of human rights. So there's a lot more to do. But I mean, we are dependent on both big and small businesses, and we need to create a good climate for business and for production and for services and everything that they contribute to society with. But we also have to make sure that we have a good defense for workers' rights and the right to belong to a labor union and what have you, trade unions. So this is still very valid, and our work is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're sitting here now, COVID is making something of a comeback in our parts of the world as we enter a winter. And political leaders in many places are talking about building back better. We have the US elections only 2 weeks away. It's a slogan there. Some people have commented that some of the world's leaders slowest to respond to the data around COVID have been male politicians. Some people have commented that female politicians have been quicker and more responsible in their reaction. It is clear that some of the workers, so you mentioned workers, at the front line of this fight against COVID, whether it be in the health services and the care homes, in supermarkets and supply chains, are women, right? And you're famous for your feminist foreign policy, Margot, and your role as a leader. Do you look at the COVID issue and the COVID response through the lens of gender or not?
Yeah, you have to do that. It's absolutely clear that this pandemic actually discriminates. In one way, it discriminates against men, because at least from the beginning, I'm not sure what science and our experience tells us now, but at least initially, it affected men more than women. And of course, also there was an age discrimination, so more older people caught this disease more often. And I think that we have to realize that many of those most affected on a labor market were women, because it was the service jobs, and there's a majority of women also working in the healthcare sector and et cetera, and those that take care of the elderly, but also in the homes, where we actually saw the level of abuse and violence against women going up enormously, almost everywhere in the world. And this is just crazy that women have to go through this. They are then sort of trapped in a way. They need to be home, they are isolated, and that's to them the most dangerous place. So you have to look at it also with a gender lens on. And I think that this has taken an enormous toll, of course, on our economy, on our health systems, and everything you can think of. But it will also have to lead to a reflection about gender issues, and exactly, first of all, how do we stop violence against women? And unfortunately, children is also part of
and there's been a spike. Does the data show an increased violence because of the lockdown? Is there data that supports that?
Well, yeah. I think that I've seen those reports about violence against women, that has definitely increased, and more cases, which is so sad and very counterproductive also, if we want women to enter into the workforce, and if we want women to to play fully their role in society. And they also have more precarious jobs, and this is where I think we have a role to play. I immediately actually joined a group of international leaders and women who have held jobs both within the UN system, in the European Union, and around the world as foreign ministers. So we created a network of women, and we wrote to the Secretary General, and we've tried to write articles and be active in the debate, also proposing different actions so that we can deal with these challenges.
I remember the financial crisis 12 years ago, and there was, in countries like Iceland, for example, there was a big discussion around the role of women in decision making, right, coming out of the financial crisis. Are we going to see an equivalent coming out of COVID as we build back better? What does building back better mean for women, and how can we make sure that it means something?
Well, yeah. What do these slogans mean when we get back to something that seems close to normal? It's very clear that we have to at least build back better, in the sense that things cannot be as they used to. We have to change a number of parameters and the phenomena in our society. And I think that women will insist on seeing a change in, for example, how societies and governments deal with violence. I think they will ask for higher pay, for higher salaries, as they've done in my country, because they say, all right, you say that you are so grateful to all the women who have taken care of you in the hospitals and in daycare, in schools, and with the elderly. So then you have to pay up as well. You have to make sure that we have better conditions. And I think that would be a good thing, to rethink also how we take care of and who takes care of the elderly. So that is, but nothing will come automatically. We will have to lead such a debate. We will have to engage in such a debate and come up with some ideas about how it can be done. Well, I worry about a world where we have seen an almost frontal attack on democracy, and sort of the foundations of our democracy. We've seen it, of course, now also in the US and in other countries where the autocrats have taken over. They are elected autocrats, and they do everything they can to stay in power. And this, unfortunately, has also created an attack on women's rights. Very often that's what they start by doing. So I'm being a bit political here, but clearly this is a situation that everybody can notice. And I worry a lot about that. And I think it requires also some work to protect human rights and women's rights.
Agreed. Another issue of the moment, I mean, IHRB has worked over the past 11 years on migrant workers and migrant worker rights. And we're aware at the moment, as we sit here, there are up to 400,000 seafarers stranded on ships around the world who have literally been there, many of them, since the beginning of the epidemic, who can't disembark, who can't go back to their countries of origin. Some of them are not being paid. And if we think about migrant workers beyond that, the millions and millions of South-South workers like the Bangladeshis in the Gulf states, etc., many of whom are stranded away from home as well. They might have lost their jobs. They're not sending remittances back to their families. Many of the women, for example, are domestic workers and are even more vulnerable there because their workplace is also their home. It feels that our media, I don't know what it's like in Sweden, but certainly my country with Brexit and the US with the elections, that the media is and particularly because of COVID, has become so domestic in its focus. We have
Yes.
become more insular, perhaps, even in the past couple of years. COVID the lockdown has also been a lockdown in our thinking, and I see very little media coverage of these migrants, some of the most vulnerable people in relation to what's going on and the shutdown in the global economy.
You're absolutely right. I haven't read anything about that. I have not had anyone report sort of to us in Sweden in a comprehensive way about this. So I think you're absolutely right. And I also think that, of course, by nature of this problem, I can understand if governments have to become sort of national, because now they have to try to convince people not to travel too much, so they have to stay at home. They have to look at how does this impact our economy, our health systems, and everything else in society to get that to function well. But it fits into that bigger and longer development of sort of moving away from multilateralism and cooperation, and instead insist on sort of national solutions and a national agenda. It won't help us, because if this is a proof of anything, it is a proof of the fact how interdependent we are, and that these problems, they know no national borders. They travel around the world very, very quickly, and more quickly since we are global as well. We travel. So I think it's the wrong solution to think that we can solve this on our own. And now the next test will, of course, be the vaccine. Will we find a vaccine that will actually be distributed to every person, old and young and poor or rich, everywhere? You should have the right to get protected. And as I have said also, I hope that we will come to a point where we discuss what are the root causes. How come we get these recurring pandemics, and what do we do if we have a new variation of this next year already? So, you know, we have to look at the root causes.
Absolutely. And if there are any journalists watching this, I mean, I think there's so many unreported stories around some of the true victims of what's happening around the world.
But do we know how many they are? Is there an estimate of how many they are around the world?
Well, we know on the ships it's up to 400,000 seafarers. In terms of migrants, I mean, there are literally millions, of 20, 30, 40, 50 million migrant workers. How many of those are stranded because of the inability to get their passports or pay for return fares, or pay the recruitment fees that they paid up front? We know it's millions. Margot, we don't have a precise number on that. That's part of the problem. A lot of times these people are victims and are invisible, but we know through our networks of migrant NGOs around the world that this is a huge issue. And they're trying to establish a foundation or some kind of fund, a relief fund, that could at least get money to some of these people, and either families in countries of origin or the stranded workers abroad, just to keep people, you know, eating. Because oftentimes these people have no recourse to social security in the countries where they are working. Right, some of the times they have very limited rights. So it's a huge priority for us and many organizations, trade unions, NGOs, and even businesses, right, that are working together through our leadership group on responsible recruitment to try and work on this issue. But we're very pleased to have you working with us on that now. And another set of issues that have received a lot more attention over recent years here are issues like Me Too, like Black Lives Matters, like LGBTI rights, that have come along, you know, since you were last on our advisory council. I know these are not new issues for you, but they suddenly particularly Me Too, suddenly came to the global consciousness 3 years ago. Do you see an interconnection between these different issues? Is this a trend? Is this some sort of social consciousness, or are these just completely different issues being driven for different reasons in different places around the world?
No, I think they are interconnected in that it is a rising level of awareness of these things. And also we have more of identity politics as well, which can be both good and bad. But it is also it's a positive thing because we start to reflect on, so what does human rights mean?
Yeah.
Are they universal, and how are they to be implemented in the specific case, and also to have to deal with a history that is often rather dark and sad, and realize that this is the truth about our own national history or world history, and we have to learn from it. We have to understand it. And but it has become increasingly difficult and hard to work on human rights as well. We can see it in the Human Rights Council in Geneva. We can see it everywhere, and people start to interpret this as not being universal rights, but something that you can shape within your own borders. And so this is a very important and timely debate as well. Important for us at the Institute to see how we can contribute also.
Yes, and thinking back to your time within the European Commission, next year we're expecting to see some European Commission proposals on mandatory human rights due diligence for business and mandatory environmental and climate change due diligence for business, which has long been coming, but it seems now that some of the legislation we've seen in France and it's being discussed in places like Switzerland, the modern slavery legislation in countries like the UK and Australia, that some of this is beginning to tighten up now and become a bit more binding, stronger expectation of business to perform on social and environmental issues as much as business needs to perform on financial issues. Now, do you see, because of everything we've been talking about in the past half hour, do you think there's a fundamental shift coming?
I hope so.
I think we're all thinking, Margot, are we just, when we look at ESG and all these other things, are we looking into the glass or the tea leaves and seeing the patterns that we want to see there? Or do you really think something's happening?
No, I don't think anything happens without a struggle. It won't happen without organizations like our institute or other human rights defenders around the world. If they had not made us fully aware of all of this, nothing would have happened. And I think we should also thank, of course, somebody like John Ruggie, who has been so important, and knowing fully well that the time was not ripe for introducing this as binding, but rather recommendations, and you start by that. But today we also have to deal with a much more individualistic, sort of capitalist money-making machinery around the world. So you have to counter that with these type of rules. They have to be binding. Don't you see it the same way?
Absolutely. No. I think without a doubt. And what's interesting is increasing numbers of businesses also feel that these rules have to be binding, because there are many around the world, including in our own countries, that will cut corners. And we're seeing this in trade discussions at the moment in the UK. UK's trade negotiations with Europe, but also at the same time starting to talk to the US. And what's interesting in the UK is that we have farmers driving their tractors, on protests over the past couple of weeks because they don't want to be undercut by less environmental standards and less health.
No, exactly. And you know that we defend very strongly the system that we have in Sweden and in Nordic countries with collective bargaining and very strong trade unions. And they have always been well organized, and they negotiate the level of salaries and all the conditions. And right now we are having a very lively debate about changes to the existing legislation and to this system of having negotiated deals. I think we have to be. I think we have to defend also this and care more about the system that we have, because it has brought peace on the labor market. I mean, we have very few strikes or sort of demonstrations with our system, and also we've had constant rise of pays and salaries over the years. So it has brought something both to the employers and the employees. And I think any system that produces that we should take care of. We are at a point where they say, well, you have to modernize this system. You have to do this or that. It has to be easier to fire people and maybe easier to hire them as well. But there is always a line to draw there, and there is a balance to maintain. And I think this is what the debate is really about. Absolutely.
All right. So moving to a couple of my last questions really is about IHRB's work as it's emerging. And I don't want to be unfair on you because you're new, you're just coming in as chair. But I think one of the first times I met you, I was thinking about that this morning, was in 2003. You'd been talking to companies on climate change issues as part of your role as EU Environment Commissioner. And we brought together Mary Robinson and some other companies to say, well, could we not do the same on human rights? Could there not be even before John Ruggie started his mandate, could at least a number of companies look at this in a positive way and not just throw the lawyers at the conversation? What I like now actually is that the climate and human rights conversations are coming together again. They're certainly coming together in the legal sense around due diligence, but also accountability. The Paris Climate Agreement makes reference to the concept of just transition. And when we talk to the International Trade Union Confederation and others about what that means, and so workers are at the center of it, absolutely. And this idea that to make the changes we need to make in the next few years to meet our Paris commitments and to reach net zero, obviously there has to be quite a dramatic, radical shift in the portfolio of business and the energy that businesses use. And that can be quite traumatic for local populations and workers. And we've seen Europe and all parts of the world that if in a post-industrial context, if workers are just stranded, they will get desperate themselves. And a lot of populist politicians, of course, have drawn on that support to make promises. So the transition, bringing everyone with us in an environmental process, is a social issue, and it's about workers. And we would say it's about the human rights of everybody affected by business operations. How do we make that happen? It just seems such, as we enter into it, Margot, and I'm just thinking in the European context, coal mines in Spain and Poland and other places that are, Colombian coal might no longer be fueling power stations in the Netherlands and Germany. It's such a shift. Do you have a vision? Can we really make it happen? Can we really bring people with us on this environmental journey, or are we going to ghettoize communities and who will lose well-paying jobs?
No, this is what I find the most fascinating right now with the work of this institute and the IHRB, and I really like the mission statement of the institute. I think that it's excellent. If every business understood how its actions could undermine respect for human rights and took proactive steps to prevent their impacts, the world would be a different place. Responsible business prevents potential harms, ensures accountability and delivers lasting value. Isn't that's a wonderful way of describing it? But of course you have to break it down, and I think with the help of Mary Robinson, because she was maybe the first to speak about climate justice, to make the link between climate change and adapting to climate change, and at the same time ensure that people can enjoy human rights. That is really the challenge, and we just have to do it. But I think we have to provide some good pilot projects that will show how it can be done, sort of on the ground or in a particular situation. But without that, we will leave people, of course, questioning the whole climate change science and practice as well. So we have to work with governments also to tell them that this is a good thing to engage in such a plan for just transition.
Well, I look forward to that. And the other new program we've started is on the built environment, with actually quite a few partners in Scandinavia, with the Rafto Foundation in Norway, the Raoul Wallenberg Institute in Sweden, the Danish Institute for Human Rights are good friends of ours as well. And I'm just thinking, why is there does Scandinavia still have something very special it's giving to the world here? Why is it that it's the mayors of cities and towns in Scandinavia that are thinking about human rights at the very local level and are also thinking about building back better in their own municipalities? Why is it that we see this in Scandinavia and not so much elsewhere? You still got this secret thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we are well educated. I think we live in societies where you have in societies that are democracies, where you are sort of respected in your own right, and you also expect something from your leaders, from your government, also from your local community, that they must bring something to you or back to you. And I also, this is the reality we live in, that most people today live in big cities, and that sort of concentration to big cities will continue. So you have to ensure that you can find everything you need also in your city or in your living environment. And this is exciting, and it's good. I think also on climate change they have been very good. You have to build sustainable cities where all your needs are met, and that is an enormous, formidable task to build back better also from that point of view.
Well, thanks for your time. I'm very much hopeful that next year, 2021, we might actually have an International Advisory Council meeting in person.
I hope so too. I hope so.
We can all get together, hopefully for a few days, a good amount of time to really think this stuff through. I'm glad not only have you rejoined our board, but it's clear from what you've said that you still have faith in the business and human rights movement to add value.
Absolutely. I'm proud and happy to have been asked to chair your advisory council, and I still think that this is a worthy cause, and it's a good way to spend the time that I have when I have fed the chickens and I really hope that one day we'll be able to meet in person.
Yes, so thank you, Margot. Thank you to your chickens for sparing you for a while, and the bees that are probably sleeping somewhere safely, I hope, at the moment.
I think. Take care now, and stay safe, and see you soon again. Bye.